I will ask the clerk, is there a supplementary agenda this evening?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. There is no additions to the agenda this evening. However, I will note that Report 18E, which is the road upgrade policy, has been pulled by administration and it will come forward at a future meeting of council.
I'll now deal with disclosure of pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, or general nature thereof, the items before council tonight. Councillor Solomon, please.
Thank you, Worship. I have a conflict with respect to the in-camera agenda item. Let's see if I can get the right number. It was with respect to tech savvy. It doesn't seem to have a number on here. But anyway, that's the one.
Number 6.
Okay.
Any further? Disclosure of pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, or general nature thereof, of the items before council tonight. And Councillor Oche.
Yes, sir. I had number 5 from the closed or in-camera meeting, please.
Seeing any further? And seeing none. I now deal with the recognition, and we have with us today, and I wonder if we will give a little spiel while I make my way up. I would ask Councillor Wesley, Councillor Carmen McGregor, and Councillor Van Dam to please join me up at the front. Please.
Your Worship, councillors, family, friends, and supporters, thank you for this wonderful opportunity to gather before you. We are honored to be here tonight. Breast cancer survivor dragon boat paddling began at the University of British Columbia in 1996. Dr. Don McKenzie, a professor in the Department of Sports Medicine, launched this program to test his theory to prove that strenuous, repetitive upper body exercise would be beneficial for breast cancer survivors. In 2000, Don Verhage was driving home one night when he happened to see a 1967 Voyager canoe, a Cowan canoe, sitting on the front lawn of a home out near Alvinston. He had to stop. The boat belonged to the brother of one of our own, Kathleen Myers. He stopped, asked a few questions. As it turns out, Kathleen was just starting up a dragon boat team for breast cancer survivors in London, Ontario. Kathleen shared her knowledge with Don, who in turn contacted a few survivors in the Wallaceburg area. In 2001, these ladies formed a team called the Breast Buddies. Currently, the team is made up of 34 women from the Chatham-Kent and Lambton areas and is a mix of paddlers and shore buddies. Between May and September, we practice twice a week on the Sydenham River in Wallaceburg and compete in several festivals in the area. We would like to thank Don Verhage, your late brother Ron, and the Verhage families for getting us going and for your continued support over the years. Also, we would like to take a moment to thank the Ragin' Dragons of Chatham-Kent, who you see here in their red jerseys. They are always supportive, encouraging, and willing to lend a helping hand anytime we need them. A perfect example of this is the fun practice that they have organized and are hosting for both of our clubs this evening. When we are out on the water, whether it's during a practice or a race, our goal is always the same. We want to show survivors everywhere that there is hope, that there is strength within each one of us, and power to move beyond a diagnosis of breast cancer and live a healthy and active lifestyle. Thank you.
Colette, would you please come up? You know, this is always a moment that everybody gets affected by cancer one way and always deal with it inside their own families. Some of us have been directly affected with our own lives, and some of us have been through our spouses have been affected by cancer. It's great to see such an organization and people participating and bringing, number one, awareness, but also letting people know that you can survive. And it's important that, you know, the morale and the spirits are up on everybody. Excuse me, this is... So I do want to pay recognition to everybody, the Breast Buddies Dragon Boat team, because on behalf of council and the municipality of Chatham-Kent, I am pleased to recognize you as members of the Breast Buddies Dragon Boat team. Direct or indirectly, this terrible disease has affected you, whether you were a paddler, a shoreline buddy, a shore buddy, or coaching staff. Your courage, determination to carry out Breast Buddies missions to promote awareness of the quality of life after the diagnosis of breast cancer, while imparting hope and empowering all with the disease is both admirable and sincerely appreciated. Best wishes to those participating in the upcoming International Breast Cancer Paddle Commission Festival in Italy. Regardless of whether you're going through it personally or in spirit, you have each to contribute to the success of the Breast Buddies Dragon Boat team as you choose to. Paddle through it and work with the survivors of breast cancer from all walks of life. And it's dated in Chatham-Kent on the 25th day of June in the year of our Lord, 2018. It's signed by myself and indicates each council member serving currently on council. To the ladies who participate, whether it's on shore or a paddle, you touch the lives of those who are affected by it and give them inspiration and hope of recovery, because not always recovery is part of everybody's traumatic experience. I've seen that personally. So on behalf of council, I wish to, Claudette, present you with a certificate, and if you'd be so kind as to assist me in reading the names of those who participate as part of the Breast Buddy Dragon Boat team, I'd greatly appreciate it, as we could present each one of them with a certificate of recognition.
Up first, our coach and stern, Margaret Oxford. Karen Armitage. Jennifer Black. Ellen Boris. Grace Churcher. Janet Denkers. Debbie DeBritta. Nancy Elgie. Gwen Frankland. Susan Hamill. Jane Hardy. Anne Hume. Ann Coomans. Valerie Barcroft. Marie Lynn. Linda McDonald. Dorothy McAlone. Kathleen Myers. Vicky Passett. Janet Ridgers. Claudette Robert. Barb Robinson. Julie Schooley. Cheryl Sinclair. Carmel Tate. Pat Van Dam. Willie Van Dinther. Marilyn Walsh. Catherine Wardell. Phyllis Warmerdam. Joanne Western. Deborah Wilkins. Mary Williston. And last but not least, Dawn Verhage.
I would, oh, don't go. Just once we get done the hugs, which is nothing wrong with it, okay? And while we're finishing the hug, I just want to apologize because, you know, dealing with cancer, it's so important to see groups of people coming together to fight, to survive, but also bring awareness that more checks need to be happening. People can't ignore their doctor's orders. They need to make sure that they're going for examinations and stuff. I just want to say on behalf of council, it's great to see the inspiration of individuals that are around the circle today and your contributions you've done not only to having fun and living life to its fullest, but also bringing a message home to others who get the news and don't know what to do. It's so important that they can reach to somebody else for moral support and making sure that because it's all around the spirit inside the person that changes how we feel or what we do. So I just want to say thank you very much. You don't know the impact you're making on people. And sometimes we never realize what we do. But I must say, you've made an impact on this community. And we're proud to say that you're part of our Dragon Boat team. I would ask that you please join me up front for a group photo because I think it's important. After that group photo, which is always so important, I would like our colleagues who are here today and their moral support today because I think it's appropriate that we get a total group shot, which is also, you're all dressed in red, so let's bring the red and the yellow after we get the yellow photo. Please join me this way so we can have our photos together. No, you're up in the front. Don't hide.
How come you're never in the front row?
I know.
You're like me.
Yeah.
And now I'd ask that the others please come and join us. So, because we do this together. We're going to move on with the agenda as for council. I will turn to the clerk as deputations as of 3 o'clock today.
None were received.
Our next item on the agenda deals with the consent agenda. Councillor Fluker,
Pleased to move it, Your Worship.
and seconded by Councillor Verkutteren. Any items of interest? Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Your Worship. 11A2.
Councillor Foss. Seeing no furthers. All those in favor of the consent agenda? All those opposed? And it's been carried. And we'll deal with the first item, 11A2. Councillor Solomon, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Several weeks ago, I asked for this report, and I'm pleased with the disclosure of the financial details of the expenditures. And there's a second sheet, which I guess is the sort of an addendum to it that breaks down the expenses in pretty deep detail. So I'm happy that we received this, and it's available for the public. And that part is pretty, as far as I can tell, pretty transparent. And it appears at the end of the day that we've spent in the last year a little over $500,000 net, given that some of this was federal funding that was received to offset. So I think it was $632,000 before that, if I understand the report correctly. So I've got some questions, and I don't know who wants to answer them,
He's coming up.
or who is going to answer them. Okay, the first one's a pretty simple one, and what are hosting fee expenses? What do you mean by hosting fee expenses?
Through you, Mayor Hope, hosting fees are expenses the expenses incurred when we have delegations. We had about 19 different delegations who traveled to Chatham-Kent. Those are the expenses that cover the activities during that period.
So these are when they're coming, when a
To us.
delegation is coming here to Chatham-Kent, as opposed to the other expenses that are Chatham-Kent employees going the other way.
That's
I got
correct.
that right?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. So part of the request was to get the expense portion, and the other was to determine the return on that investment that the taxpayers are making of $632,000. So here's what I'd like to understand a bit better. That is on page 4. I think that's the sort of the return portion of it, isn't it? The investment is all the numbers, and the return is the results. Page 4 of the report.
Through you, Mayor Hope, that's the qualitative results of the effort. The actual return in terms of dollars and revenue would be on the last page.
Okay. And that,
It amounted to approximately $950,000 per year, $250,000 of it for the actual facilities, and the residential property taxes of $700,000.
okay, but in order to understand that, you have to have the qualitative results, and that's what I want to ask you about through His Worship. It says new business attraction, secured Krinner GmbH investment from Germany. Is Krinner's already at the time of last year, Krinner was already an employer in Chatham-Kent, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So when it says secured, who among our staff secured this Krinner investment?
That was a combination of people in the ECDEV department. Suzanne Brown was the lead on that.
Okay. I noticed that she attended some fairs in Germany. Is that what I should, if I look at that, does that answer the Krinner investment question?
The fairs that were attended in Germany included the Volkswagen purchasing event, excuse me, on that mission, we were introduced to Crinner, that's correct, but we also took a number of local companies from Chatham-Kent looking for new business with us to those trade fairs.
That's the, through your worship again, it shows that the Volkswagen Supplier Fair, is that what we're talking about?
That's correct.
And that's the one that's in October. It says 6th to 13th and then /12. Does that mean it was in, can you explain that to me? What's the /12? That's the year?
2012. Yes, through you, Mayor Hope. That's
Oh, I see. Well,
/12 is the year.
so that means we're talking 6 years ago.
We've been to 3 of those Volkswagen buying events with a number of different automotive companies from the region here, from the community. So there would have been one in 2012. I believe there was one 2 years ago.
2016?
And possibly I think they're held every 2 years.
Okay. So the number that I just earlier quoted at 506,000 net, that's not an annual expenditure then at all, is it? It's over a period of time.
That's 7 years, through you, Mayor Hope. That's 7 years from 2011 to 2017.
So these results that are here are over that same period of time then?
That's correct.
2011 to 2017? Okay, good, thank you. Has that, the second result is secured an international school, which has purchased property in Wallaceburg. Is that school now set up?
It's in the process of being set up.
Okay, what year was that secured?
This year, this past, what are we in? 2017.
Okay. And is there a trip that I can look at and sort of attach to it? Or a country even?
Through you, Mayor Hope, the country is China.
Well, there's several on here in China. Okay.
I don't have the specific date of that particular trip, but it would have been 2015, I believe.
Okay, thank you. And then there's the last one is secured investment in a greenhouse supply chain from chain and maintenance company from Netherlands. So I didn't see any trips to the Netherlands on here, but can you explain that one to me? What it means, secured investment in a greenhouse supply chain and maintenance company. Did they, supply chain and maintenance company, move here?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, they're building in Blenheim Business Park,
Okay,
and that was secured the discussion started in 2016, and they firmed up in 2017. They ran into the Bobo Link problem up in Blenheim.
okay, I just, when I went through this on the weekend, I was trying to sort of match the,
Yeah,
'cause you did, I mean, there's a lot of detail here.
yeah, I'm sorry, and I should have clarified. We met them at the Select USA trip that we took to Washington,
Okay,
I believe 3 years ago.
okay, and then the next one is consortium of companies out of Peru, and I can see that you and the mayor went to Peru at one point in time in 2016, right?
Through you, Mayor Hope, yes, we attended the Apex Summit in Peru along with a local investor.
Right. And there's still, that one hasn't landed yet, I take it. They haven't made a decision yet.
That's correct.
Okay. The other one I'm interested in generally, I guess, is the answer that people have been asking about the fertilizer plant. Which one, are they trips to China, or are they when I'm looking through this, are they trips to India? Or both?
Through you, Mayor Hope, those trips were primarily China, but there was also one to India, different companies, obviously, and fairly extensive discussions on each trip that we took, talking to those fertilizer companies.
So when I look back to April 2013, and it says China and India, that would be one of those trips to for the fertilizer plant, correct?
It was, we never took a trip specifically just to discuss one project,
Okay.
but that did include the fertilizer facility, yes.
Okay, thank you. And I get one of the questions I had asked a couple weeks ago when I asked for this report was the current state of the fertilizer investment. It's not going to happen. Have we announced that anywhere?
Through you, Mayor Hope, somewhere in here, page 2 or 3, I believe,
That's what I'm looking for too.
I outlined the status of that. There were 3 issues that we were addressing with the fertilizer facility. One was the fact that chemical production is not a permitted use within the community. So we felt, obviously, we have to adjust the official plan to reflect chemical production.
Right.
There were other hurdles in that area, which included environmental and regulatory events as well, or hurdles to pass. It was deemed that at a minimum, the cost of doing that would be about $1 million. So it was felt that we better close a deal and attempt to share those costs with the proponent or the investor group. So that was one issue to be addressed. The second, of course, we kept the rail line with the view, because a urea plant must have rail access. And part of the justification for keeping the rail line was the potential for a urea production facility. Unfortunately, nobody was in the market to sell property along the rail line. And it really, in a couple of cases, we were told it's not a matter of price. We're just, you know, they were legacy farms, and they just were not had any interest in selling.
Okay.
The third issue that hit us at about the same time, and these discussions with various companies from many parts of the world went on for 3.5 years. And toward the beginning of 2016 to midpoint, the price of urea fell. And that dampened enthusiasm as well. So we had those 3 factors of impact us. I believe I reported back to Council in September of 2017 on the status of the fertilizer facility. Yeah, through an email, not.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm asking these questions for the public because
Yes.
they don't get those emails. So, so from that, I understand then that is not going ahead, and it's not going to be resurrected. The zoning, I think we knew that though at the outset, correct?
Through you, Mayor Hope, yes, we did know about the zoning, and we kind of delayed because we wanted to get a shared cost basis. This plant is like $3 to $4.5 billion plant, so we felt trying to get a shared cost on that upfront area was reasonable, and it would have been reasonable if the other factors had not impacted.
Okay, thank you. My last question deals with the railway, so I guess we're now at the point where we don't need that at all anymore.
There, through you, Mayor Hope, there's a number of companies that would have liked to have rail access along that line, but unfortunately they cannot sustain the economics of maintaining it and keeping it running. So We don't require it for the fertilizer plant.
Right, the only economic justification was the fertilizer plant, correct?
That's correct.
Good. Thank you for the thorough report with all the disclosure of this information. And thank you for answering those questions.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I remember bringing up a similar motion back in November of 2015, and a similar report came forward. My questions to you, Mr. Burton, would be, how many, annually, ballpark, how many staff hours are involved in each overseas trip? Either setting them up, going to them, and then debriefing?
Well, through you, Mayor Hope, that's,
It can be a big ballpark.
I'll give you a guess.
Yeah.
I would say each trip will involve two or three staff for about 2 to 3 weeks.
That's setting the trip up, going on the trip, and then debriefing?
Oh, no, sorry.
Yes.
I'd say 2 to 3 staff for about 4 weeks then.
About 4 weeks' time. Could you put a dollar figure to that, again? Ballpark?
I don't have salaries at,
Okay, but 2 staff for 4 weeks, 1 staff for 2 months.
The
Okay.
CO would like to chime in.
Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship. Of the economic development budget is approximately $1.4 million, somewhere in that neighborhood with all of the staff, travel, et cetera. And approximately 20% of that is allocated towards business attraction. That's both foreign direct investment, or it could be attracting someone from within the province or Manitoba. But that's just to give you a rough figure, and that would be considered sort of an industry standard. Our local businesses are not growing fast enough just to sustain the growth in our economy, so we're looking at always having some additional business as well, but about 20% of that $1.4 million.
through you, Mayor Hope, so that would put it around 300,000 for the total effort,
Right,
including staff time.
including staff time. Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Further comments? Councillor Van Dam, followed by Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. Mr. Burton, I think you've done a great job with the report as you tried to summarize the details from 2011 to today. And we can't change the past. It is what it is. And you've dealt with those circumstances, I feel, the best you can. However, you've identified 2 challenges in this report for limited success today. And one of those is NAFTA and in China, currency restrictions. So having identified those 2 issues, what would be the scope of work? What would excite you in economic development to bring jobs and opportunity to Chatham-Kent with those 2 restrictions in place today, politically?
Through you, Your Worship. The first issue being NAFTA, what would excite me is some resolution to that. As I mentioned in the report, most investors that we talk to from outside the country are looking at the U.S. market. And in fact, many of our Canadian investors are interested in the total North American market, maybe not so much Mexico, but U.S. So that has to be resolved. Nobody is going to invest in a facility, a plant, without some resolution to know what is going to happen with NAFTA. And the certainty of that is the problem right now. I know the Trump administration is starting to look at bilateral arrangements rather than trilateral, and that would make a lot of sense for Canada. So that's number one. That has to be resolved. That's the main issue. Now, we were in a unique position until this thing started to go sideways, and that was the fact that we had the CETA EU trade agreement. So when we went to Europe last year, we were able to talk about CETA being free trade with Canada, NAFTA being free trade with the US, And we were unique in offering that to investors. So they could bring parts in, for example, automotive parts to Canada, finish them, work them here, and ship to the US. And that was that received a lot of interest from European-based manufacturers that we spoke with. NAFTA's kind of screwed that up as well. So we've got to get a resolution to that. I've forgotten the second part of your...
You know, a lot of your work and energy was on foreign trips to China. And it sounded like there was a lot of positive discussions, but now with current restrictions on private investment from China into North America, how do we deal with that?
Through you, Your Worship, those won't be on for a long time. It looks as though, quite frankly, that they are loosening up now. I think the Chinese are as confused with the U.S. position on trade as the rest of us. We have an investor in town that arrived today, for example, from China, and we'll be discussing a possible investment with that person. So the currency restrictions appear to have been alleviated somewhat. The problem with them, when they did come in, there was no sense in them talking to us or us talking to them. And the only investment, major investment by a Chinese company is the one I mentioned that went to New Brunswick, and that happened to be a government-owned company that made that investment. So I believe those are being loosened, and I'll have a better idea tomorrow because we will be raising that with the investor that's arrived today.
Can I ask one more? I've had the opportunity to participate in some nice conversations with some of the delegations we've had. And one of the niceties of those, one of the benefits of bringing those delegations here to Chatham-Kent is we have established memorandums of understanding, developed some pretty decent relationships. Where are those at now?
Through you, Mayor Hope. The MOUs, the memorandums of understanding that we have with 3 different companies on 3 different projects are non-binding. It's almost a step where we're trying to get to a more serious level. We visit them, they visit us, we have ongoing discussions, they come back with a lot of questions. Then we work toward getting a non-binding MOU before they decide, okay, this all makes sense and we're going to invest. That's the purpose of them, and I should have mentioned in my note there, my report, that they were non-binding. As we would have moved forward with those companies, we would have established a binding memorandum of understanding as the next step.
So we can't get them back.
What we're doing as follow-up is we have about 300 different contacts, companies, that we have either met with or had discussions. We have ongoing mail going out to them, and we follow up with them. So we're maintaining the relationship and the contact without necessarily having to travel to China. And they have not invested anywhere else, and they were serious about their investments. So we will hope to reinvigorate some of those. That's right.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. Mr. Burton, I counted in total about 20 trips to China, so I'm just going to ask the obvious question. Because we bought the rail line, which many of us were opposed to, and that was integral to the fertilizer plant, but you're telling us tonight that there was no interest in the farmers selling the land, why wouldn't we ask that question first? Because you can't really move the rail line, right? It's a pretty obvious question, but, you know, the general public's kind of baffled as to, you know, the time, effort, you know, and money that was put into this And now we have a rail line, which frankly, I don't think a train will ever go down. I didn't think a train would ever go down it ever again without serious investment, but that's another issue. But we did buy it, as you say, for the fertilizer plant. So my question is, wouldn't we ask the adjoining landowners if they were interested in selling before any of this?
Through you, Mayor Hope, let me clarify. We bought the rail line for two reasons. One was the potential of having the fertilizer plant established. The second was to meet the demands of those companies on the rail line. So it was a combination of reasons, not simply the fertilizer facility. As well, we had a number of, and I don't know if you're going to report this later or tonight, but we had a number of potential buyers that wanted to operate the rail line. So there were a number of factors that went into the decision to go ahead with the rail line.
Stuart, would you like to elaborate, please?
Excuse me, Mayor Hope, the question was, why didn't we ask the landowners? The rail line's another issue. That's its own kind of mess. But the question was primarily, why wouldn't we ask the farmers that would have to sell their land, presumably a lot of them, if $4 billion with the BE plant, didn't we ask those people, like, wouldn't that have killed the whole thing at the onset? Obviously, if they're not willing to sell the land beside the railroad.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. So what maybe I would do is just go back when the direct question about the rail line. I don't believe there was ever an intention to buy the rail line for fertilizer exclusively. I think council will remember coming back, and was the first few days of a term where they received notice from CSX where the line was going to be discontinued, and it was a decision of the day to say we're going to acquire it, at which point in time we didn't even know what price it was. But we decided to say we're going to acquire it for the businesses that were on there. And that goes back a long time prior to any discussion with fertilizer. I think my colleague will say to you, Mayor Hope, that because we had the rail line, we were able to have the discussion about the fertilizer plant. Without that, there was no discussion. So maybe Michael wants to jump back in, but I just remind council that the decision to purchase the rail line was done in advance of any discussion at any point in time with anybody from China or India. We did it. I understand the decision was made at the time to try and protect the businesses that were on the line using it at that point in time. You know, we can get into, we've talked to 13 Class 1 rail lines, or Class 1, Class 2, looking at interest in it. Councillor Solomon, if I could, Mayor Hope, maybe just say that from WDC Rail, what's going on with the rail line now. We are currently in the process of looking at the asset. We are listing the asset and trying to come up with value, and we'll be coming back at some point in time. I think we've already got some direction from council what to do, and that's to see what we can do to maximize return on that investment. But probably gone too far, but I just want to make sure we just keep it straight. We didn't buy the rail line for fertilizer.
Through you, Mayor Hope, to answer your second question, we had discussions with a number of the farmers along there, both the mayor, myself, as well as Mr. McFadden. Initially, we had discussions with them, and we were not led to believe that it was, no matter what price, not available. So when we were talking to them, we didn't talk price. We got an indication that, yeah, I might be interested in selling the property at an astronomical price. But when you're talking a $4.5 billion investment, astronomical prices are all relative. So initially, we had the sense that given an extremely high price, there would be land available. They needed about 150 acres along that line. So, you know, we weren't looking for 1,000 acres.
Thanks, Mayor Hope. Okay, Michael, but like 5 minutes ago you said they're heritage farms and they wouldn't sell at any price. Now you're saying, well, they would at an astronomical price. So it was got to be one or the other. And that's just a comment. We're not going to agree. The other thing with the rail line, I realize that we bought it in order to assist the existing businesses on the line. But I'd made 2 motions to sell it, and we were convinced not to sell it solely because of the fertilizer plant, just so we're clear. And that's correct. I think you would remember that, because you sold it to us, right? So the idea of keeping it for the fertilizer plant.
Through you, Mayor Hope, I want to clarify. I don't want any confusion here.
Me neither. Thank you.
Initially, when we talked to the farmers, there was an indication that, yes, they might be interested in selling. As we went down and got more firm with some investors on the need for the land, then it became clear they were legacy farms. They were not interested in selling at any price.
So at what stage of the process was that? At the end, hopefully? I doubt it, but.
No,
Well, that was my question, is
well,
when you
quite
determine that you
honestly,
can't buy the
yeah,
land?
it would have been toward the end of the process, because why carry on if we haven't got land?
Well, that's my point. Why carry on if you couldn't get the land? But
Exactly.
you'd been at it for a couple of years, like 3?
I was at it for about 3.5 years, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know that we're going to agree on this one, but thank you, I appreciate it.
Further comments? And seeing none, Councillor Solomon, a motion to receive.
So moved.
There's been seconder, Councillor Verkutteren. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and is carried. Let's deal with the next item, dealing with recognition. Councillor Foss, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I thought that I'd pull this item because I think it needs to be highlighted because of the performance of the Dresden office. We're the only office in the whole system that is part of Ontario Works, and for achieving the customer service award that they've received, in my opinion, needed to be highlighted because of the fact we always get bad news. So when we do get some good news, we should highlight that. So I'd personally like to thank Donna Kilbride, Jenny Step2, and Lydia Rishi, who operate that office, for their commitment and dedication in customer service. And I went in personally and thanked them, and I think we need to highlight those types of accomplishments. So thank you.
Councillor Leclerc.
And I'd like to echo his sentiments exactly. There's days I go in there once a year, twice a year. I got to go in with my fleet of vehicles, and the women over there are just fabulous. Leon, you forgot this. Leon, you need to do this. Leon, you need to do that. Then they walk you right through it. So the atmosphere in there is, sometimes in the past we've heard where it's a daunting place to be, these license bureaus and such. The women over there make it just so heartwarming, and it's nice to go in there. I bring them cookies too once in a while, but no, it's congratulations, only because like Councillor Foss says, we don't hear a lot of good news stories, and these women go above and beyond, and they got great leadership. So kudos to them, and congratulations again. Thank you.
Councillor Foss, we actually knew you would bring this out, so we knew that the recognition part you would actually highlight. I just want to say, even without this recognition award, I've received numerous comments from persons that utilize the service there and talk about the extraordinary service they get from the people in Dresden. So it's great that they received this award, but we receive positive comments and feedbacks on a regular basis about the services received there. So our special thanks goes to the staff that work at it. Seeing no further comment, a motion to receive, Councillor Foss.
So I move.
Seconded by Councillor Leclerc. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and it's carried. Our next item on the agenda deals with notice of motions. Councillor Wesley, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I, Councillor Jeff Wesley, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the July 16th, 2008 Council meeting for discussion and voting. That Chatham-Kent begin the process of removing obsolete rail crossings, signage, and begin repairing, repaving those crossings for the benefit of drivers and school bus operators. Staff to report back to Council for the meeting on August 13th, 2018, or on the date that the WDC rail report comes to Council.
Any further notice of motions? Councillor O'Shea, please.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I, Councillor Mark O'Shea, will bring forward the following motion July 16th, 2018, that administration bring back a detailed cost of purchasing the old Kent County Jail. 2, see if we could fit the rest of the Chatham-Kent staff that are scattered in the buildings across Chatham into the old Kent County Jail. 3, a cost to fix the old Kent County Jail building for the CK staff. 4, to see what we could expect if we were to sell the buildings the staff are in now. And 5, if we could keep a place for the old Kent County law books. Thank you.
Further notice to motions. Councilor Robertson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. I have a motion that I'd like to bring forward, but I'd like to bring it forward tonight due to time sensitivity. So I believe that we would require some sort of motion to waive notice.
So in order to waive notice, we'll require a 2/3. If you mind placing your motion, if I can get a seconder, and then I'll ask the question on the 2/3.
I'd be pleased to. And it should be a motion about replacing the HVAC system in this council chamber. This is ridiculous. Anyway, my motion is, whereas Tech Savvy Solutions, Inc. proposes to build fiber-based telecommunications facilities throughout Chatham-Kent, and whereas it is an objective of the municipality and this elected mayor and council that high-speed fiber internet connectivity be publicly accessible through the municipality of Chatham-Kent, I, Councilor Derek Robertson, hereby make the following motion for immediate voting: that the mayor and clerk be authorized to enter into a memorandum of understanding between the municipality and Tech Savvy for the development of fiber-based telecommunications facilities throughout Chatham-Kent, with Tech Savvy investing up to $26 million over 18 months, and the municipality investing $6.5 million previously set aside for the Connect to Innovate program towards open access fiber facilities to be built in Chatham-Kent.
Do I have a seconder to this motion? Councilor Kenneth. I'm going to ask Councilor Solomon, please.
Thank you, Worship. As in the earlier declaration of conflict of interest with respect to the in-camera meeting, I have the similar. This arose out, apparently has arisen out of that meeting, which I didn't attend. So I have the same conflict.
Okay.
And I declare that now.
Any further conflicts of interest? And seeing none. I will now ask council for the 2/3 requirement in order to bring this forward, as it is time sensitive. That council waived the notice requirement to allow the motion by Councilor Robertson to be voted on this evening in proper notice. I would ask council now to consider the motion before you. I will turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Okay. I will now turn back to Councilor Robertson. You may begin your opening remarks.
Mayor, hope this matter is of an urgent, time-sensitive nature. And it's imperative for our community to be able to move forward with an appropriate partner that is willing to invest in our community in fiber internet. And so therefore, I brought forward the motion as a result of a discussion this evening.
Further comments? Further comments? Then seeing none, I will now ask council to consider the notice of motion before you. And I will turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Any further notice of motions? Then seeing none. Let's deal with the first item on the agenda. It deals with tender awards. Let's deal with the first item.
Item 13A, tender award contract T18-110, road crack cleaning and sealing.
Councilor Leclerc, please.
I'd be happy to move recommendations 1, 2, and 3.
Seconded by Councilor Vergooderen. Any comments or questions? Councilor Van Dam, please.
Through you, Mayor Hope, I did have a question with this one. And the question sort of revolves around the contract process. I know when we approve crack sealing, the budgets are designed for volumes. So basically, whatever we spend only goes so far. And so when I read the report, I was curious as to where we left off last year, because I know last year I asked the question, how come certain roads didn't get done? So I learned something, that it was all volume-based. So there was a number of roads that didn't get done last year, so by default, I assumed that they would be added into this year's allotment of roads, and they weren't. So I was just wondering if you could explain that to me, how certain roads that weren't done last year, who would I, naturally assume to be on the report this year, why they're not.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. So the list of roads that were identified last year that were not carried over to this year, they were on last year and we didn't address them obviously due to budget. As you mentioned, this contract is solely based on volume and materials, and we couldn't address it within the budget that we had. So this year, utilizing the road rating data that we had, and basically upon field verification, crack sealing is no longer really the appropriate maintenance procedure for this PCI rating for those roads that we took off, or those roads that were identified last year but we're not moving forward with this year. So the preferred range for applying crack sealing is between 70 to 90 PCI. And for example, some of the roads that were around the 70 or the low 70s last year are now within the 60s, which falls to the next level of maintenance. And that next level of maintenance includes things like micro sealing or fog patch, which we will be moving forward with in the next couple of years.
As a follow-up, and thank you, Mayor Hope, and thank you for that answer, Mr. T-Bear. Good answer, but moving forward, if we were to now apply different measures for road repair to the roads that got missed, is that new repair now more expensive than it would have been to apply the crack sealing? It may not be a fair question, but if we have to go into a different mode of repair, that obviously isn't the rubberized crack sealing, is it going to be more expensive now to do that fix on this road that continuously gets missed?
We do not have the information in front of us or readily available to determine the costs associated with the next levels of maintenance to be able to really answer that question. But ultimately, that next level of maintenance would have been applied at some point in the road's lifespan, regardless if you did apply the crack sealing or not. So it's just falling in line. It's just moving forward in a little bit faster manner with that next level of maintenance.
So through you, Mayor Hope, would it make more sense then to set a bigger budget for crack sealing so you can do a little bit more, so we don't have to deal with the unknowns and more deterioration for a whole year?
So based on the data that we did receive from Frugro and all the road information that we did receive, we will be, as we are still analyzing all that data and determining if we have a lot of roads within the 70 to 90 range essentially for PCI, and crack sealing is the preferred alternative to extend that lifespan, we will come forward with a recommendation to council to make a recommendation to increase that budget for crack sealing for following years.
Further comments or questions? And seeing none, you have the motion before you. I'd ask council now to consider the recommendation now brought before you. I will turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-1.
Let's deal with the next item.
Item 13B, tender award T18-102, surface treatment.
Councillor Foss, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendations 1, 2, and 3.
And seconded by Councillor Vergooderen. Comments, questions? Councillor Pinstall, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question through you, we are getting a lot of roads done this year. I'm happy to see that, but we do have some other ones that do need to be done, like Turn Line up by Highgate. How do we get them on the list, I guess is my question, for next year, say?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. So just to clarify the question, ultimately roads that were not addressed, to get them on the list for future years?
Yeah, we had a meeting out there, I would say last fall, and we were showing the condition to Miguel, he's gone now, but the condition of this road, which is deteriorating at the sides. And we were hoping to get it on this year's list. We didn't. So I guess, what's our procedure to have that looked at for next year?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. So going forward, even so with the surface treatment contract, as well as the crack sealing contract, and even our hot mix asphalt contracts, We are currently analyzing all of that road data that we received from Frugro for the road rating information. We do basically, we analyze, so for crack sealing, everything under a PCI of 60 was identified to be included as part of this contract. So we are analyzing that data and rating it based on road class, based on traffic volumes, and also based on public works input. So through all that consultation, all that analysis is what we derive this list from, and that's how we will be moving forward with the lists for the following years as well.
So if we get our local roads guy out there and he can tell you the condition,
That gives your public works guy?
Yes.
Right. So through consultation with our public works department, we discuss this list with them, and we make sure that we're addressing the right roads in accordance with the PCI data.
If I could add, Mayor Hope, Council made some great progress on the AMP plan over the last few years, but our roads budget right now stands at 48%. So until we get closer to full funding, this is the process we're going to have to follow, is prioritize and always look at the actual condition before we can really make any commitments on any roads.
Yeah, I get that. Norton Line obviously has to be done. If anybody's been down there, it's bad. So I'm glad to see at least it's on here, but, okay, so we keep at you for next year. Thanks.
Councilor Leclerc, please.
More of a, through you, Mayor Hope, to Mr. Kelly. Thomas, more and more our reports are coming back 1-2 tender bids. As a farmer, I belong to a buying group which allows me to access larger volumes and sometimes for a better price, more economical price. My fear, well, I won't be here next year, but my fear is it's going to only get worse. What are we doing as staff members? And maybe it doesn't need to be answered tonight, Mayor Hope or Mr. Shropshire, but are we going out to other communities, hey, let's share the paving jobs. Let's share some of these crack and seal. Can we meet in a room somewhere? Because my fear is every year there's only 1 or 2 bidders, and are they meeting, at a supper table and, setting prices, and we're not really getting a value. So that was just a comment, Thomas, or maybe you have an answer.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Hope. I do have an answer. First of all, this is a condition that's widespread across all of Canada and the U.S. All of this work that the province is doing on the asset management plan, requiring all municipalities to have a plan in place, has generated a lot of activity. And absolutely, one of the keys for competitive bidding is to have competition. And it's a very good situation right now for contractors. The market price has definitely changed. So one of the things, last infrastructure committee meeting, I gave a full presentation on our purchasing process. We are going to address this again tomorrow, looking at creative ways of increasing competition, but also ways that we can bid to capture some very competitive bids. So if you would like to attend tomorrow, it's at 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Any further comments? No further comments. Council, you have a recommendation before you. I'd ask Council now to consider that recommendation. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Next item on the agenda deals with the Chief Administrative Office. Let's deal with the first item.
Item 14A, municipally owned industrial business park pricing.
Councilor Brock McGregor, please.
I'll move the recommendation.
It's been moved by Councilor Brock McGregor, second by Councilor Robertson. Any comments or questions? And seeing none, I would ask you now to consider the recommendation now before you. I will turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Let's deal with the next item.
Item 14B, AMO Board of Directors nomination for Mr. John Norton.
Councilor Wesley, please.
I would move the recommendation.
And seconded by Councilor Pinsino. Comments, questions? And I would ask you now to consider the recommendation now before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Our next item on the agenda deals with Finance, Budget, and Information Technology Services, and let's deal with the first item.
Item 15A, offer to purchase 46 First Street, Wallaceburg.
Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Worship. I would move the recommendation in the report.
Seconded by Councillor McGregor. Carmen McGregor. Any comments or questions? Then seeing none, I would ask you now to consider the recommendation before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
Councillor Verkutteren and Salmon? Okay. Councillor Salmon? All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Let's deal with the next item on the agenda.
Item 15B, motion by Councillor Van Dam regarding healthcare strategy for Chatham-Kent.
Councillor Van Dam, you have the floor.
It's nice to have a lighthearted moment before something this serious. So basically what I'm saying here is that a special strategic healthcare fund be established in the 2019 budget for a $300,000 base budget contribution, which is equivalent to approximately 0.25% increase on residential taxes, and that the 2019 tax policy be structured to have this contribution come in only from the residential taxes. And furthermore, that this fund be used to provide equal access and fair distribution of healthcare dollars on all expenditures needed by our current hospitals, along with our partnering rural hospitals, which provide patient care to many of our Chatham-Kent residents. And that our family health team have proper access to this fund as well in order to improve physician recruitment and bring in more doctors.
Seconded by Councillor Pincinel. Councillor Van Dam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. So I brought this motion forward to bring about great change and make a difference within this municipality. When we look at the overarching theme, we have a great plan in place for the next 20 years called Plan 2035. And I believe this bodes well in getting us to the end result at that time. The second component of it is it's designed to bring people to Chatham-Kent. We heard a couple months ago how 92% of people, when they consider a place to live, look for health care. And so having said that, I want to put guarantees in place today that will give opportunities for the future. For example, in the past, we know that former townships like Zone, Howard, and Orford always have contributed generously to the local hospital. And I don't want to see one-offs come to the table anymore. I want to see our hospitals, neighboring and in our boundaries, work together out of a pool of money we can draw on to meet healthcare and physician recruitment. The other component I want to deal with is this provides fair and equal access among our hospitals in and neighboring that they can rely on to deliver the services that they need and want to the residents of Chatham-Kent. It also speaks to the needs of our family health teams. We have 3 family health teams here in Chatham-Kent. We have Thamesview, our own, and one family health team in Tilbury. Thank you, Councillor Fluker. So the needs of our family health teams are also very important. It's not a big request that our family health teams look for. Whatever we can give through this fund would be much appreciated. I mentioned before that 92% of people, when they look for a place to live, consider health care. But more importantly, if we do this, we're doing it as a community and providing leverage to the province of Ontario that we're doing our part. And so when we meet with the ministers at Roma, when we meet with the ministers at Good Roads, when we meet with the ministers at AMO, we can say this is what we're doing for our residents in Chatham-Kent. We're creating a special strategic healthcare fund for our family health teams to draw on, for our neighboring hospitals, which have Chatham-Kent residents use them, and for our own hospitals to make a difference in purchasing clinical capital equipment, as well as recruiting physicians. The other part is, it is a big ask, and there's a lot of words up on there, hard to define their exact definition. But I don't want to get down in the weeds tonight. I want to be able to get this thing into our budget and have our CAOs of all of our hospitals work together with our administration on how to develop and let the funds go where they need to go. Might be based on headcount, might be based on user fee. I don't know, but I think it's best that the CAOs of the hospitals work with our administration and our family health team to figure out the best way to use this money. And lastly, is a phrase that caught my mind earlier today, and I'll just read it off to everyone. The economic and general well-being of regions and their residents are directly related to the well-being of the healthcare sector, and the well-being of the healthcare sector is dependent upon physicians. And having said that, I'll open it up for questions and comments.
Any further comments, Councillor Pincinel?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think this budget's necessary to assist our local hospitals and our healthcare system in general. By having a budget in place, I think it makes your decision easier when the need arises in one of our healthcare facilities. I think it's necessary that this council shows that we are on board with supporting our local healthcare system. We are an aging community, and baby boomers are all getting to that age where more medical help is needed. And every year technology gets better. The hospitals are trying to stay up with what's going on, in the latest technology, and people are living longer. And I just see this as a good investment for our community. Thanks.
Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
Hopefully this will be explained to me, but I just want to understand, and I understand it's a good intent to be able to do this, but why is this coming up now, and why is it not coming up at budget time? Like, why are we doing this now? We're actually, I guess another month, we can't impose this kind of thing on the next council, but I still think that this is something we discuss at budget time, not in the middle of the summer.
We'll answer that question in a bit. Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Your Worship. Having been involved a great deal with healthcare in the community which I live in, and being one of the still current board members of the family health team, we just put on a $30,000 addition to our family health team. We have 6 doctors, 2 nurse practitioners, and all kinds of other staff that work from toes to fingernails, I think. But I guess my point is, communities raised this money. The Tilbury and area community raised the money for the 30,000 square feet. I can appreciate Councillor Van Dam's concern, but I personally think it is something that this council should not get directly involved in under any circumstances. We have so many other expenses to deal with. Yes, healthcare is a major factor. And I know where he's going with this because I represent the area of Wheatley and Romney, as does Councillor Oche, and they regard Leamington Hospital as their hospital. Every one of our 6 doctors in our family health team, if you have a heart issue, a cancer issue, you're going to Windsor or you're going to London. And that's where you're going. I got to be blunt, if you have a bone issue, they send you to Chatham, because that's the key issue. We have 2 hospitals right within our boundaries, Wallaceburg and Chatham Health Alliance, that they just raised $6 million for state-of-the-art CAT scan. The community, now yes, we kicked in a few funds, but the community raised well over $5.5 million. I think healthcare is something that the community members will raise the funds for. I don't think we have to get involved. I have to smile, and I don't want to bore this council or anybody that's listening. But we were down to 1 doctor, Your Worship, and I'm sure you remember that in Tilbury in 1989, 1990. They had a very smart mayor at that time in Tilbury.
And a good labor leader.
I don't think that deserved a giggle. But at that time, I was fortunate enough to gather 4 ladies. 3 of them have since passed away, that literally founded this family health team in dealing with the government. We went from 1 to 5 doctors. We now have 6, and I got to tell you, dollars does not recruit new doctors into our community. Patients, number of patients. Can I start off with minimal expenses in a family health team for the first 6, 8, 9 months? And they will come. We just recruited a new young doctor 4 months ago. He's now up to 1,100 patients. We deal with 12,000 patients in Tilbury, and I know the family health teams here in Chatham deal with similar numbers. And that was done without any cost to our municipal council, and it will continue to be. Doctors graduating, they want minimal expenses for at least a year or two to get started in a family health team environment, and this, it works. The same thing, I think, with hospitals. If the community sees a real need, that money will be raised, and I think the Health Alliance would say the same thing. I can't support it just because I've been bugging Public Works for 2 bridges I want to get done, and I hope they're listening to me, and I know. My goodness, we listened to Councillor Van Dam talk about getting roads done. I won't even tell you about the roads that I need to have done that I got to tell folks now. They're not going to be done. Why we would get into this when I think we are in decent shape in Chatham-Kent right now. Thank you.
Councillor Verkutteren, please.
Just a quick question, Your Worship. It says here, this is for only one budget, just to 2019. It doesn't mention that it's going to be continuation, does it? Not in this motion.
He'll address that.
Okay. Well, I was just questioning that.
Any further comments? Councillor Brock-McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. I certainly respect Councillor Van Dam's passion for this issue and identifying that hospitals and healthcare providers are under stress to find dollars in communities. But I think it's clear that this isn't a municipal responsibility. So we are partners in healthcare. We provide emergency services, and we certainly have a very large role in addressing the social determinants of health. And I think that spending in those areas is certainly within our realm, but I don't see a spend in ongoing funding of hospital equipment or renovating offices or anything like that is something that the municipality should be taking responsibility for. And I think that if we go down this road, we're opening up a bit of a confusing fund. Conceivably, any hospital or any healthcare provider that's providing services to residents of Chatham-Kent would be able to ask for dollars out of this fund. You could have Sick Kids Health asking, you could have centers of excellence throughout Ontario that treat Chatham-Kent residents daily looking for this type of money, and $300,000 certainly wouldn't go very far in healthcare in Ontario and making a dent in that need. So while I respect the passion and the identification of the need, it's not something I think that should be under a municipal umbrella.
Further comments? Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments. I certainly agree with what Councillor Carmen McGregor said and Councillor Brock McGregor said as well, too. I think if we are going to consider this, it really should be a 2019 budget item. But before we even go there, the way I look at this is that we have experts within this community, experts in the healthcare field. We're a municipal government. We deal with municipal things as opposed to getting into healthcare. And I think our role in healthcare is simply where those organizations will decide on what their needs are. They will put together a capital campaign, and they will come to us, rightly, and ask for a contribution to those large capital campaigns. Not a one-off kind of budget where I can see what will happen. We'll have this money in there, and there'll be things, little items coming to council, and we'll fight over how we're going to divvy up the $300,000 on an annual basis, and it just won't work. Let's stick to what we do well, which is running a municipal government, and let's let the various healthcare providers in this community, as they identify needs, come forward to us and say, here is the need. Can you play a part in that? Which is what we've done before with the huge capital donations. So I can't support it, but I certainly support healthcare in our community. Thank you.
Seeing no further comments. Councillor Van Dam, please. Closing. You may want to answer some of the questions that have been asked.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you, Mayor Hope. Certainly some good comments made around the table here this evening. I have no problem introducing something like this now. I might as well get it out in the open, make it an election issue. We got a lot of great candidates out there. You know, it gives people and the folks at home something to think about. So the question, you know, that I pose and every candidate should be thinking, do you consider healthcare important? And if you do, you would support this. Because we know that for every $200,000 invested by a municipality into healthcare, the return on investment is $647,000. And at the end of the day, we're not alone in our thinking. There are other municipalities across Ontario. Smith Falls is a very recent example where their mayor is considering the exact same thing. And why is their mayor considering the exact same thing I'm proposing tonight? Is because the needs today are much different than they were in the past. There existed before amalgamation plenty of opportunity for the former townships to contribute to their hospitals. We have no guarantees now in the platform that we operate in. By creating a strategic fund, this gives a fair and equitable playing field to any body, any foundation, or any family health team that wants to come and work with the municipality. And I couldn't think of a better way to engage our council, our residents, and give them some guarantee that when they want to move to Chatham-Kent, we're on the cutting edge, that we care about healthcare, that we want to see great services for our aging population, and we want to be precedent-setting for the entire province. And I believe in time that it will give us great leverage as we create a sustainable fund every year, which is a quarter of a percent. That's not a lot of money. And I look forward to the time and the future when our local foundations can work with other hospitals and figure out the best way to use this money. And I really believe healthcare is important in today's day and age. Thank you.
Seeing no further comments, I will call the question of council. You have a notice of motion before you. I'd ask you to consider the motion before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion fails 5-13.
Next item on the agenda deals with community development. Let's deal with the first item.
Item 16A, motion by Councillor Wesley regarding recognition and naming committee.
Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move the recommendation that administration prepare a commemorative naming policy.
It's been moved by Councillor Wesley, second by Councillor Carmen McGregor. Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's pretty straightforward. This is really an initiative put forward by one of our local residents, Craig McNeil, and I think it's something that certainly would be of interest. Oh, and he's actually here. It's something that would certainly be of interest to, I know, residents across Chatham-Kent and specifically Dresden. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. This motion is very timely because there's a movement in Dresden to rename the Dresden Arena to the Ken Houston Arena. And the minor hockey and junior Kings are pursuing that. And when they approached me, the notice of motion was presented to council. So I told them that the report would be coming back to council as to the process and the mechanics, and probably a committee to review the application. So I'm very much in support of this. There's a lot of people that have contributed in many ways to our community, and I think it's a very fitting way to recognize those commitments to our community.
Seeing any further comments? Then seeing none, I would ask council now to consider the motion before you. I will turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Our next item deals with Community Human Services. Let's deal with the first item.
Item 17A, request for transfer from Senior Services Life Cycle Reserve.
Councillor Brock McGregor, please.
I'll move the recommendation.
Seconders, Councillor Fluker. Comments, questions? Then I'd ask you now to consider the recommendation. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Let's deal with the next item.
Item 17B, request for health reserve transfer.
Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Herman. Any comments or questions? Councillor Foss.
I'd just like to make a comment, I guess. It's been some time since we've seen an increase in our base budget with the family health, or sorry, the health unit, and for this money coming is a real positive step in the right direction. And if we don't include our 25%, then we lose that 75%. So it's very important that we support this motion.
Further comments? Then seeing none, I would ask you now to consider the motion before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Next item on the agenda deals with infrastructure and engineering services. Let's deal with the first item.
Item 18A, Rainbow Crosswalk relocation, Community Chatham.
I'm going to make sure that council knows that after reviewing the information, and it does say on the procurement bylaws it requires a 2/3. I believe it does not require a 2/3, and it only requires a motion on the, because it's already been decided, we're just changing a location. So it does not require a 2/3 requirement for to vote on this. So it'll just be a matter of that we're changing the location from King Street West to Forsyth Street, and that's the only thing you'll be voting on is location, not to do whether to do or not to do is not the motion. So just so you know, it's just a matter of location. The decision to do has been done, and it is a matter of just dealing with the location itself. Councilor Brock McGregor.
I'll move the recommendation, then I have just a brief comment.
It's been moved and seconded by Councilor Robertson. Councilor Brock McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. I just wanted to note that this location change was run by the BIA, who was supportive of the location change, and we also talked to members of Chatham-Kent Pride, as well as some of the individuals that donated towards the project. So everyone was more than happy to see the change go forward, and looking forward to see it unveiled.
Seeing no further comments, I would ask you now to consider the recommendation before you, the motion before you. Turn to clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 14-2.
Our next item on the agenda deals with
Item 18B.
Yep.
Two Creeks Drain Trail Land Use Agreement, Wheatley.
Councilor Fluker, please.
I'm very pleased to move this, Your Worship.
Seconded by Councilor Oche. Any comments or questions? And seeing none, ask council now to consider the recommendation now before you. And to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Let's deal with the next item.
Item 18C, Capital Drains Levying Bylaw, 2018 Final Tax Levy.
Councilor Leclerc, please.
I'd be happy to move the recommendation.
It's been moved by Councilor Leclerc, seconded by Councilor Verkutteren. Any comments or questions? And seeing none, I would ask you now to consider the recommendation now before you. I will turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Let's deal with the next item.
Item 18D, Drain Maintenance Levying Bylaw, 2018 Final Tax Levy.
Councilor Foss, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation.
Seconded by Councilor Carmen McGregor. Any comments or questions from council? And seeing none, ask council now to consider the recommendation now before you. I will turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Next item.
Item 18F, motion by Councillor C. McGregor regarding dumping of grass and organic yard waste.
Councilor Carmen McGregor, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Whereas the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry consider unauthorized deposits on Crown land also includes our waterway system, a violation under the Public Lands Act. Therefore, if dumping occurs, they encourage reporting of this activity through the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry TIPS line. Whereas there is a problem of grass clippings and other organic yard waste being thrown into the rivers of Chatham-Kent. The waste then flows with the stream, often clinging to breakwalls and docks, and then remains there. The grass and clippings begin to deteriorate and become unsightly and smelly, causing what appears to be contamination and algae. The clippings cause not only an unsightly mess, but also become slippery, making it dangerous for swimmers and boaters wishing to use the breakwalls or docks. Therefore, administration be directed to bring back a report to council by August 13th, 2018 meeting. The report should include the best method of managing and preventing dumping of grass and organic waste into the water system within Chatham-Kent. This report should recommend a possible bylaw, either creation or amendment, and future education methods that would be used to inform communities.
Seconder is Councillor Wesley. Councillor Carmen McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor. This first came about with actually the dragon boat races. You met all those lovely ladies today. When right prior to the event, there were a number of areas in the downtown core that the grass had been dumped in up the river, and it had accumulated in around the break walls, making it quite difficult and slippery for the use of the water basin. And the water basin does happen to be one of our focal points in town when we have visitors. And so if you're walking the boardwalk or whatever, you could see the unsightliness of this. It came to me via a number of comments from local citizens, one including that had called the Ministry of Natural Resource and Forestry a number of times and finally received the result from them telling them that the waterway system was Crown property and dumping into the water system is illegal, and that if it's reported to them with evidence, that they would definitely follow up and deal with the issues of those clippings. Since that, I was interviewed by the radio, but it has gotten out, and I've now been contacted not only from a person in Chatham, a person in Dresden, and just on the issue of this and local farmers. So it is a problem, and it has been pointed out to me that the clippings are often in our yards and such. We use a fair amount of, or we don't, people often use fertilizer. So the actual grass being dumped into the water system can actually be a higher content than some of the runoff in some of our fields. So it is a continued or an added to that problem when we are trying to eliminate the chemicals and different things that are getting into our waterways. So when I brought this, and I have talked to administration since, and the best way to work and go ahead with this. I'm not completely positive that bylaw is the way to go. It may be an added quote into one of our local existing bylaws. However, it is regulated under the Ministry of Natural Resource and Forestry. So, but I think what the bigger problem is the educational piece of this. I truly do not believe that people intentionally, and maybe I'm naive, but I don't believe people intentionally drop their clippings into the waterway system knowing that what damage or what issues, environmental issues they may be causing along the way. And, you know, it sounds like maybe a little thing, but if it's happening all across Chatham-Kent, I've heard of it happening now along the Thames River and the Sydenham. I've had somebody else call me up and ask me and actually sent me pictures of what's around their dock and witnessing their neighbors and this kind of thing. So, I don't want to cause a rift between neighbors, and I simply want to, because the reporting system definitely goes through the ministry, but what I would like to see is an education process that comes from the municipality of Chatham-Kent. For example, I think a couple of good venues would be the leaflet that goes out annually from the municipality of Chatham-Kent that tells us where we can bring our clippings, when there are days that we can take our paint and our cans out, or when there are holidays and when the garbage days shift and change. I think it's a perfect idea document to be able to put a piece in there as to the dangers and that it is not a legal method. And I think if we have other notices going out in our papers, because there's often days of leaf dumping or pickup and different things. So I would like to see that come through. So not only within that brochure, but also in other methods that we can put that out there, the educational piece, and that it is enforced through the ministry and how that goes through. So it would also mean some contact with the ministry to determine their reporting process and what they would prefer. So if this passes, I'd be very happy to pass this along, and I think there would be some happy people within our communities to know that we're going to try to do something about it. And we're never going to completely stop it, but I think education goes a long way to bringing awareness, especially to those. If somebody's going to intentionally dump, they're going to intentionally dump, but some that may not be aware may then beg their clippings up. And it was also put to me that, you know, the best thing to do with your clippings is to mulch it and put it back into your yard, because of the fertilizers that are there will help keep your yard and make your yard even nicer and grow a lot nicer if those clippings are back into the grass. So it's just that education piece that I would like to see come out. And I said, I don't know if anybody has any other questions. I'm quite happy to answer.
Councillor Solomon?
I'd move the question.
It's been asked to be moved. Seconder, Councillor Robertson. All those in favor of moving the question? Opposed, if any? It's carried. I'll call the question. Ask Council now to consider the notice of motion before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-1.
Just to let Councillor Carmen McGregor know that I will have a phosphate reduction committee, a co-chair, dealing with the Thames River, and I'll talk to the group there about how do we do public information better.
Perfect. That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda deals with closed session report. Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
Thank you, and through the mayor, I would move the closed session report of Monday, June 25th, not present at the meeting were Councillors Leclerc and Solomon. Council directed administration on proposed disposition of land by the municipality with regard to offer to purchase 88 Metcalf Street, Shrewsbury, Section 2392C of the Municipal Act. Proposed disposition of land by the municipality or local board with regard to offer to purchase 105 and 119 Arnold Street, Wallaceburg, Section 2392C of the Municipal Act, and a proposed plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by or on behalf of the municipality, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege with regard to fiber network expansion and tech savvy, Section 2392 F and K of the Municipal Act.
It's been moved by Councillor Carmen McGregor, seconded by Councillor Oche. Seeing no comments, I'd ask Council now to consider the recommendation now before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Our next item on the agenda deals with non-agenda business items. Councillor Pinsino, please.
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to send a thank you out to Thamesville Threshing Festival Committee. They did an awesome job, even though the weather didn't cooperate quite well this year. The parade was down a bit, but both the attendance both nights in the refreshment tent was up. So all in all, they had a good weekend, and I'd like to send kudos out to them. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Van Dam, please.
To echo what Councillor Pinsino just said, Randy, very nice of you to attend the Threshing Festival Parade, even though the weather was sour. And to you, Councillor Pinsino, you put your other duty first. You're on a fire call, I understand. So kudos of you to do that and miss one of the greatest parades in East Kent. But having said that, only time will tell if the parade in Ridgetown, East Kent, this weekend will outdo what it did last year. So good of you to do that and serve your community on a fire call where some people were seriously hurt.
Just for the record, I got back in time to catch half of the parade.
Councillor Leclerc, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. Through you to Thomas. Thomas, we have a road use agreement when they were building the overpass in 41 and 40. This is in relation to Councillor Fluker's area, but I was given it this morning and I'm going to forget the next council meeting. Do we have any road use agreements when the 401 gets bogged down and they go through our municipalities? Do we have anything? Because I hear it was just a disaster on the weekend in Tilbury. Roads are getting damaged, and again, us as taxpayers will have to fix the solution. So I guess if you need me to bring a notice of motion next time for you to approach somebody to do something, but I guess I want to bring it now before I forget for next meeting. Do we have a road use agreement with the MTO? Should we have one going forward?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. I have spoken to the MTO about this concern, but at this time we have no agreement.
So to answer your question, Councillor Leclerc, I don't think a notice of motion is required. Actually, this morning I met with Monty McNaughton and had discussions over a number of factors that are affecting, and one of those had come up, and I actually made the comment on the weekend, on Friday when I was asked, dealing with the whole issue of the local taxpayers. When accidents occur, let's get penalized and they get additional traffic. So please leave that with us. We are already in discussions with the new provincial government, which will be sworn in on Friday. And we'll know who the cabinet ministers are, and then we can start to do our work that we need to do. Councillor Fluker, please.
When that time comes, I have 2 roads that you can certainly show them.
We'll definitely take those into consideration,
Yep, thank
Councillor Fluker. Seeing any further comments under non-agenda business items? I do have one, and I think my question will either go to John Norton or to Bob Crawford. Recently, it kind of startled me this morning when I was listening to the radio and an advertisement that was on the radio, and it says, "Not in the budget." And I noticed driving in our municipal bus shelters, postcards that are actually labeled in there. It raises some concerns to me, and I want to ask you what's going on.
Your Honor, it seems that the SEIU has undertaken a advertising campaign to make some suggestions about our level of EMS business, and it's a little unfortunate, really, given what was really the reality is. During the last budget discussions, Council, remember, I assured you we would take a long look at the level of service and the pressures that continue to mount. So we've been working closely with Medavie, the contractor, both locally and at the executive level. We've acted as per council direction, and we have a long contract commitment. Over the year so far, we've examined other methods of mitigating the pressure, deployment changes, community paramedicine, and we continue to look at the changing trends, the types of calls, what time of day, and so forth. It's been suggested that we have 1 ambulance in the evening. That's not true. What I can tell you, on a typical evening, Chatham would have from 6 o'clock in the evening till 6 o'clock in the morning, a paramedic and a supervisor. Also out of Chatham, from 9 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, 2 paramedics on an ambulance. And from 4 o'clock until midnight, an additional 2 medics. So the minimum we get down to overnight may be 1 ambulance dispatched out of that station. However, the rest of the stations, we have medics on all the stations. So we always have 6, 7, or 8 ambulances. But Council, remember, we also talked about the dynamic deployment model. So we don't dispatch our own ambulances, they're dispatched by the province of Ontario. So what that means is, while the crew in Ridgetown or Blenheim starts off their day in the morning or in the evening attending there, they get in the ambulance, and depending on what happens in the community, they can be dispatched anywhere. So you need to keep that in mind when we start talking about what's being presented. We always have 8 on-duty ambulances until 9 o'clock in the evening. We have 7 from 9 o'clock till the morning, and there's 6 between 000 is midnight and 8 in the morning. So you know that the CAC is located in Wallsburg. They continue to use automatic vehicle location technology. They can tell where the closest ambulance is. In fact, in Ontario, the provincial dispatch system allows to send the closest ambulance depending on the case, and that's depending on the urgency, but generally it's the closest ambulance. A case in point, I think I mentioned earlier, we had a bad vehicle accident that occurred between Thamesville and Dresden. Thamesville had the foresight to call for additional help, which I thought was really commendable. We had 8 children, 2 parents involved in a rollover, plus the driver of the other car. So in an incident like that, what happens is, and what I understand happened, is that patients were taken to a number of different hospitals to try and relieve the pressure on any one emergency department. So some of the patients went to Chatham, some went to Windsor, some went to London. So, and that's down to the CAC in conjunction with our general manager, CKEMS, a Medavie employee. So that's all true. When ambulances are returning to station from these incidents, they can also be dispatched. So it's more complex than just saying this station has an ambulance attached to it. That ambulance could be dispatched anywhere. A number of years ago, this council dealt with the issue of TMR, tiered medical response. And I think of council, for some of you who were around the table back then, we had a lot of wrestling and to and froing about what would be the criteria, what we would go to. So initially, we were attending a lot of medical calls that probably we didn't have to go to. They weren't really critical. I think the sprained ankles and what we found is that that was really not efficient. So the difficulty is to figure out what's effective and what's efficient. So what's efficient is the current level of staffing has been. But given the significant cost of hiring and purchasing vehicles, we are considering looking at what we might do as next steps. And interesting to note that while the people that have invested the money in our community with our media outlets, and I hope they invest more because our media outlets can use they can use that income. But it's kind of already out of the bag. We've been constructing a report to council over the last month. We're currently going through our routine and orthodox approach to these things where we take a look at our best recommendation and how much it's going to cost, because these are expensive measures. So while we do continue on with tiered medical response, which eases some of that, we are coming back with a report. We're going to try to make the July 16th agenda. And that should allow council to take a measured decision about the next steps, which affect the delivery of our emergency medical services. I think we've been pretty clear about warning council, whether it was with Chief Stubing's report, the idea that we took a look at blended services. We have warned council consistently that we're coming. We need more resources. The demographics changed. The call numbers are up. The number of code 3s are making us very nervous, where we're 3 or less ambulances available to us. And my colleague at Medivy, our general manager, Don McClellan, and I have a very close relationship on this. And we recognize that one of the solutions is to hire some more paramedics and staff a vehicle. So that's a roundabout way of answering what you're noticing in the media. What we have in the media is we have I've been assured that it's not our local medics that are funding this, but the national SEU, the union, has decided to mount this campaign. And it's suggesting that, one, that council doesn't care, and two, that there's only one ambulance available. That's not true. We have a dynamic model. So when we get down to that number, what starts to happen is other ambulance assets start to migrate our way. And if we had something serious, we would be able to send an ambulance. Could it be a delayed response? It can be a delayed response. Occasionally that happens during the day. But typically it's our nighttime where we're less busy. That's the time that we get down to one ambulance assigned to Chatham. But we still have 6 ambulances that are working in the municipality. So that part's it's a little misleading. We're not down to one ambulance. We're never down, really. We can always bring another ambulances from around. So that, I think that the idea is to try to bring some pressure to council to get us to act on this, but the answer is we're already acting on it. We're already drafting a report, and the report will be on your desk in a very short time.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention, because it just recently hit me in the radio. I heard it on the radio. I've seen the ads that are on our bus shelters. And, you know, I thought this council had left the direction for administration to work with our service provider, not with the trade union, with our service provider, and making sure that our residents are being protected and that services are being there. I guess my question, is that happening? And why is the employees of the employer who we contract service with engaged in this process? I'm trying to put it because, I mean, all it takes is fill the chamber and you'll get your money. But what it is want to make sure that we have a long-range plan to deal with emergency services here. And I mean, this weekend, this Friday, was terrible. I mean, we had an accident on the 401, and we had the accident that occurred between Dresden and Thamesville, and people were deployed. So I get it. When you hear something on the radio about a baby choking and it's going to take 20 minutes for your ambulance to get there, when I heard that, my first response is, well, what are you guys doing? And that's my question. What are you and the senior and the management team of?
If I may, Mayor, we've never had a better relationship with our CKHA. I spoke to the president of the hospital today about our concerns around the aspect of offloading times. We constantly and consistently measure those offloading times, and we work to see what we can do to help the hospital be able to process patients as expeditiously as possible. At the same time, we're in conversations as earlier today with the president from Medivy, Paula Poirier. She's traveled here recently with her team. We met in Toronto to talk about some of the challenges, and we're working these things out. The essence of this is, of course, is the relationship. We have an excellent relationship with Medivy. both with their senior executive and with the local staff that are working. I've been assured that it's not the view of the local staff to pursue this, but it is a concern. We are working towards it. We have a good relationship with everybody involved. It's never been better. Is it going to bring some difficult decisions for council? I can assure you one of the recommendations is up staff. So council's going to have to give that some thought when they see the facts in front of them.
So am I to understand that the report is coming the 16th?
That's the aim.
The aim? Okay. Councillor Vercouter?
Because this has been an issue for quite a while, as you know. The other day I went into Blenheim and arrived the Tilbury ambulance into Blenheim. Because I asked them who they were and they said they were from Tilbury. I said, where did our ambulance go? So I don't know, they're on the other side of Wallsburg somewhere. I said, what? But you guys move them around a lot. I couldn't believe it. Then I went to Richtown, there was no ambulance there.
Yeah.
I go there quite often, by the way. So I just want to know.
If I may, before you get too far, Councillor, we don't move them. Just to be clear.
Okay.
So we don't move them around at all. In fact, we attempted to get the ability to do so. We applied when Chief Stubing was here to get the ability to manage the CAC Center. We applied to get the ability to manage the dispatch center, and we were unable to do so. In fact, I believe that responsibility sits with Sunnybrook Hospital in Toronto.
Councillor Vercouter, if you may, let's wait till the 16th, because that's what I'm being told right now. Is the 16th of July. You can get into the detailed stuff at that time.
I just want to ask one more question. What is the limit on response time? What limit do we have that?
That's Councillor Vercouter, and I'm going to interrupt because
I'd like to get it.
I mean, I asked a question pertaining to an advertisement, and that's what provoked me to say, when are you having this report? Because you were told to go get all this data. I wouldn't want to have two debates. We've been told that on July 16th, potentially coming back with council with just some of the questions and concerns you have, we'll have that discussion in July. Okay. I just don't want to mix. Let's wait till we have the whole report so all of council can participate in that particular idea.
I appreciate your addressing it. Thanks.
Okay. Any further non-agenda business items? And seeing none, we have reading of the bylaws. Let's move the first and second reading of the bylaws. It's been moved by Councillor Pinsito, second by Councillor Herman. Any comments or questions from council? Then seeing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, and it's carried. We're going to move into, should council go into committee on the bylaws? Then seeing not. We got third and final reading. Third and final reading, moved by Councillor Oche, seconded by Pinsino. Any comments or questions? And all those in favor? Opposed, if any, and it's carried. And resolution of council. Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
Thank you, and through the mayor, I move that the Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, July 16th, 2018, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the municipal act.
It's been moved by Councillor Carmen McGregor, and it's seconded by Councillor Solomon. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and it's carried, and good night.